So it is absolutely a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Steve, for those introductions. Hold it a little closer. Okay. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Steve, for the introductions. I have the honor today to moderate this panel with Dan Lawrence and Maura Yates. And we are going to be talking about smart power automation in energy management. So what I'd like to do first to kick things off is have both Dan and Maura introduce themselves. Obviously, they just had a little bit of an intro, so they'll keep it brief because I think the time on stage will go pretty fast. Go ahead, Maura.
Okay, I'll go first. So thanks for having us here this morning. I'm Maura Yates with Mothership Energy. We are an ERCOT market services provider. So we started just as a retail electricity provider, grew that to over 5 licenses here in ERCOT, both option 1 and option 2, across a multitude of different queasies and sub-queasies, and have evolved into just a broader market services provider. So should you choose to be your own option 2 rep or operate your own retail operations, we'll help you with that market side, whether it's from pricing and market integration to all the way settlements. And on top of that, we've recently taken on a role of technology services. We've decided to make available to our clients and to the market all the tools that we utilize when we view the market. So whether it's forward curves, different pricing tools, or settlement engines, we've got those now available to market participants themselves. So really trying to spread the knowledge. We recognize that there are times that we're best served to have the license, and there are times that others are best served to have the license. And if others are best served because of capital, like we were talking about on the previous panel, then we're here to help you guys run really good operations and really tight operations, because as everybody's noting, data, automation, granularity of how succinctly you can run and how efficient, help manage risk. And ultimately, that's what we do at the end of the day, is risk mitigation. So that's Mothership.
Can you hear me? All right, quick intro for myself. I'm Dan. I'm CEO, co-founder of OBM. A lot of people still know us as the name Foreman, but we're trying to have a little bit of a brand above that. Historically, what we focus on, we were, as I was mentioned earlier, we started off small-scale Bitcoin hobby miners, built some software to help remotely manage operations because our mine was about an hour away from where we lived. So we wanted to make something where we could control it from our cell phones, so we didn't have to drive an hour just to manage everything. Fast forward, that turned into the market-leading software for enterprise scale, hobbyist, anybody in between, the operational tool for them to run their facilities. So single pane of glass where you can go to a web page, see everything, manage it all. Fast forward, learned about the grid and everything that goes with that, and now the platform's evolved heavily. We're very focused on load flexibility, large load management. What that looks like is making loads respond to pricing, making loads respond to grid conditions, peak events. We also really focus as a company just on what we call energy agility. So that could be load flexibility in Bitcoin mining or other traditional industries or HPCs moving forward. We also try to bring some of that into the supply side too, for collateral reduction, accelerating daily payments, ways to just view large loads differently, whether it's supply or flexibility on the grid.
All right, well, thank you both very much. So I wanted to start, Dan, given your background experience, why don't you set the stage for today's panel? When we're talking about power automation, what are we actually talking about? And if you could just kind of give a brief primer for everyone in the audience.
So when I think about power automation, maybe Maura's going to have a different perspective. She's very data focused too. Power management, from my perspective, is what do we do with the watts that are being consumed in the real time? So that could be making things respond to grid conditions. So from a demand response perspective, I think a lot of people might have heard this by now because Bitcoin miners have been preaching demand response for a couple of years now. But demand response, in my view, it's kind of like auto insurance. The grid needs something very similar. In the event that there's going to be a power outage or something, kind of like when you get into a car accident, you need to have an insurance company that you can call on to cover your auto repair. The grid needs something too. So if there's a power outage, they need things to call on to supplement that loss in generation. And that could be turning on production or that could be turning off loads. So it all nets out effectively the same. So when I think about automation and power management, it's how do we bring that automation to loads? How do we make them respond to grid conditions to keep the grid nice and flat and everything's functioning. We're not getting rolling brownouts, rolling blackouts. And then from a agility kind of perspective too, it's the accelerating daily payments, the stuff that we kind of do together, just creating more ways to de-risk some of these loads and accelerating just how money moves between supplier and consumer.
So what would be the typical equipment that you need for implementing, energy management automation?
So we're a SaaS company, but we have a hardware presence at the site. There's a couple of things we can deploy depending on how we're working with the customer. If we're going to be controlling the load and turning it up and down in response to pricing or a demand response, back to that insurance policy I mentioned earlier, that's going to be some servers that we deploy at the site that talks to every single machine on the network, aggregates it all, sends it back home, so you're able to see it on one page and control it. And then also we get dispatched from a demand response provider that says, hey, this load needs to come offline, and that we push that down to the site, talk to every single machine at the site, and curtail them. So that's our hardware presence at the site for that. To give you an idea what it looks like, some mines can be very small. They could be 10 miners. Realistically, that's where we were when we were hobby miners. We only had 10 machines. That's where the company kind of started. But some of the mines we work at have 100,000 machines there. So 100,000 machines, our software talks to every single one of them every 30 seconds and feeds all that data back real time. So it's a tremendous data collection effort. Another piece of hardware we deploy is something that could hang off the meter where we're actually reading real-time consumption data, and that can fuel how the demand response works. So if we're getting a partial load curtailment, maybe you don't have to turn the entire site off, but maybe it's 50% or 55% of it, we sample from the meter real time and adjust the load to make sure we hit those targets. Because sometimes if you don't show up enough, or you overshow, or you give too much back or not enough back, penalties can be high. We also use that to accelerate how we pay for energy in real time too. So reading that consumption real time to make sure that on a daily basis we can pay for the energy that was consumed to the suppliers.
So Maura, turning over to you. Just this week, Shay gave a presentation in the Texas Blockchain Council meeting, and in 4 years' time, you all have moved over $500 million worth of power. That's very impressive. So I wanted to, get your sense of, what is your perspective on the topic of energy management automation?
So when Dan and Austin and I were catching up earlier, when I hear data automation, I just go to risk management. As the panel before us was talking about, you guys care about capital. I look at capital as a risk mitigation tool, performance assurance, collateral to manage that risk and exposure. So the ability to have automated data, the ability to see real time what is actually happening at facilities helps us manage that exposure. Flowing $500 million means that we've worn a lot of AR exposure. That's a combination of some resi dollars, but really that's a large portion of that is Bitcoin and AI data center dollars. And so when we think about dollar exposure, it all comes back to dollar exposure, right? Like, what is your position? What is the market doing? How do I manage that? And how do I manage that when there's all these unknowns and all these different variables? I want to see what's happening. I want to see it as fast as possible, and I want to see it with as few hands in it as possible, because the more hands in it, the more places things can go wrong, and there's more of a risk, more risk. And so when we think about a large invoice and exposure from ERCOT, that's probably because market prices were high too. So $500 million is led to also as a result of summer 2023. That was a high revenue year just as a result of high market prices. And so again, when we look at that, we're looking at how do we see what your operations are doing at an exact moment in time to understand what is our real-time exposure, which are dollars on it. And any delay in that data increases that, which increases the performance assurance and the collateral package we need to see. And so all of it goes back to, okay, that's how much dollars were flowing, that's how much we had exposure on, and how can we reduce the collateral package for that much dollars at exposure?
The speed of the data is just so important now. When you look at demand response and the stuff that I was talking about earlier, a lot of industries participate in it. It goes back to just how quick data should be. A lot of industries have historically participated, but some of them participate in like day ahead calls or 30-minute notice. The grid is under capacity constraints. A lot of data centers coming online, generation not to match, PJM going to a non-capacity backed model moving forward. It's hard to make generation as quickly as the loads are coming online. And from what does that mean? You need the ability to get data quickly from the site so you can respond in real time. So loads that we're curtailing, 30-minute notice, day ahead notice, those need to move quickly too. So it's all about how quick can you get the data, how quick can you get it back, how quick can you dispatch the site. So a lot of stuff that's been serving from a demand response perspective in the past just needs to move quicker. So when we look at what's our next flexible industry, some of the stuff that we even look at is historic industrial stuff that's just viewed as not that innovative, not many people thinking about it. Oh, we already do curtailment. What does that look like? Well, we do a test once a year and we just line that up with some of our production maintenance and, we pass it. We're down for 2 hours while we're cleaning some stuff. That's not what we're talking about. Why can't you respond in seconds? Why can't you respond in 5 minutes? Why do you need to be so forward thinking and stuff has to be so strict and so scheduled?
It's kind of crazy. So if you don't sit in a rep seat and you're just in the load seat, you might not have all the visibility into how data flows in and out of a retailer. For a data point, I'm going to mess this up. Our head of data science would get this correct. I want to say we have like 25 terabytes worth of data that we store. We are data hoarders because we're looking for the patterns. We're looking for the history of how certain node zones, hubs, price points, liquidity is clearing. And when we started serving these loads out in West Texas, our biggest issue was latent data. So many of you large loads, we serve some of your meters get read once a month. You are an IDR meter. It is absolutely mind-boggling that in ERCOT, the largest loads with the largest invoices are not read all the time. Every house that consumes like a megawatt hour a day, I can get that at 15-minute intervals. Fantastic. I'm not worried about my $10 of exposure. I'm worried about my $1 million of exposure that you won't read for a whole month. Like, to me, that's mind-boggling. That goes back to a connectivity issue and the actual infrastructure out in West Texas. This meter read issue, it blew our mind that more of the mining industry wasn't up in arms about this earlier on, because this puts exposure on reps, and these reps are passing this exposure down too, especially if the reps understand how these settlements are happening. Not every meter is settled this way, but many of the meters out in AEP and TNMP have this issue. And so all of a sudden, I'm a rep and I'm getting your settlement, real settlement data, actual settlement data once a month, maybe every 35 days, every 36 days. That's absurd. And so I have that's a real exposure I wear for 36 days that I've got to figure out how to transfer. And so this idea of getting automated data, you guys can get us that data privately. We need to also figure out how to get the TSPs providing this data, getting this data back to ERCOT in a more automated manner. And so in many ways, the stuff coming out of SB6 around the increased standards, the speed of this automation, this is all very good for all of us. It's risk mitigation. More importantly, it gets ERCOT up to more up to speed, because those settlement lags, that's absolutely insane. Like that, ERCOT should not be settling $1 million meters on profiles, especially when they put like a weather sensitive profile on it. So there were times where we'd get initial settles on some of our miners, knowing that they had curtailed. They're the inverse, like the weather correlation is an inverse correlation. You guys had curtailed, but ERCOT had settled us as if you were weather sensitive, and not only had you not curtailed, your load had actually gone up at that interval. So when we think about data, we think about risk exposure. It's not just the data that the rep is receiving directly from you, it's the data that the market's getting as well. They artificially create an exposure that doesn't need to be there because they don't have the data to settle on. It's a really real thing. And it's like one of those subtle things that if you're not a rep, you don't see this. And not every rep has this on every meter, but there's still a lot of grandfathered or incumbent meters that have this IDR profile that don't have SMT or AMS metering on them.
So a follow-up question would be, when you are writing a contract and automation and energy management is part of the package, how does that affect the contract today? What are the things that you are doing in structuring?
So we like to think of our contracts as like our most valuable kind of asset, our most valuable tool. And we continue to iterate. It's been 4 years of creating these. We have like 30 templates of contracts that we've put out. And the reason we have all these templates is because of the automation, the capabilities of our miners on site. Some have more automated operations. Some allow us to actually get access to their technology. Some give us, the switch. When you give us more access to your technology and more access to your automation, I feel much more comfortable with what's going on. Our contracts are much more flexible. We're going to work with you. We're going to make sure, I know Eric was commenting on product availability and the ability to access the market. Yeah, let's give you access to market. Let's all understand what's going on. We're all on the same page here. You guys don't want to have exposure to high costs. I don't want you to have exposure to high costs. So our incentives are very aligned and uniquely aligned, even more so with the mining operations and AI operations. And so the ability to really create the contract that gives you the flexibility, that's all through engagement and working more intimately with the technology that you have on site. We'll work really closely with you. Give us the access, let us figure out how to integrate it, and we'll structure a really custom boutique contract for your operations and ensure that risk is shifted and mourned by the appropriate party.
Thank you. Dan, recently I saw you announced a milestone about CLR. Was wondering if you could, educate us a bit on that and why it's important.
So the announcement that we made recently, was around us getting a new Bitcoin miner past SCED testing, which is the thing in ERCOT that you need to pass to be able to be designated as a controllable load resource. What's a controllable load resource? That is something that is in the market, and ERCOT, when they publish pricing every 5 minutes, they use pricing as kind of a lever to control what's the market going to do. So I'm going to increase pricing, and that's going to incentivize people to curtail. What a controllable load resource does is, as part of that, they're also able to real-time adjust loads down. So now every 5 minutes, they're able to dispatch to these resources that are designated controllable load, and they're able to increase pricing and also tell this load to reduce by 50% and then maybe up by 10%. So it's very, very precise. And the difference is controllable load versus non-controllable load. Non-controllable load, ERCOT doesn't have the ability to real-time tell you what to do. They can send you a notice, and then you're going to have to pick it up, and you're going to have 30 minutes or so to respond, and you've got to do it yourself. But controllable load, it's like kind of dialing a dimmer switch. They dial it down, and your load adjusts real time. So that is the difference between controllable versus non-controllable. Controllable, ERCOT does it. Non-controllable, they ask you to do it. That's the difference. The achievement is there's some utilities that have put into their FEAs, so the kind of just view it as the agreement for the site for power and everything. You have to be a controllable load resource to be able to consume more than a megawatt of power at the site. Why did that happen? You could speculate on why was that in an FEA. But this was a blocker for some sites because around controllable load resources there was some patents that existed in the space, and those were very prohibitive. Somebody tried to basically patent, I'm going to make software that does this ERCOT spec. So ERCOT publishes a spec, and somebody said, I'm going to write software that does all that. And then they got a patent on it. So what did that do? It just locked everybody from doing it, and it made some customers capped at a megawatt because the person that had the patent was very expensive to actually use the software. So thankfully, there was a change within the last year where that patent was licensed to all of ERCOT, which let us now participate. So embracing our inner Bitcoiners, we want to be democratic. We don't want to have a monopoly in the space at all. So single software vendor, kind of like a monopoly, so not very Bitcoiner aligned. So they licensed the patent to all of ERCOT. It let us show up now as a competitor to theirs, and we were able to build a solution that got this customer through SCED testing. We've got a couple of customers now that are designated CLRs, and they are responding real time to ERCOT dialing that dimmer switch. So ERCOT says go from 18 megawatts to 16 megawatts. Within 5 minutes, they get it. And it's really, really hard to hit, because when you're going through testing, it's not like go from 18 to 10 and you can just drop 8 megawatts immediately. It's not like turning a light switch off. You have to actually track a curve. Kind of like if you're looking at a line graph and it's got to be a straight line from A to B, you need to be right on that line to pass that test. So it is not just drop it all and end up at the point. It's really, really precise. And that's what we were able to achieve through our software. And I think controllable loads are probably going to have a pretty unique spot, and I think they'll become a little more prominent in a couple of years in ERCOT.
It's such a key piece to the implementation of all the SB6 stuff. Everybody wants flexibility. That was the goal of this. And, having that visibility into the very, second and most granular interval level of operations. That's the ultimate goal of ERCOT. That's the ultimate goal of everybody. At what level and how minute can I manage that risk and exposure?
Yeah, what it looks like is you're real time telling ERCOT, and this happens every 5 minutes. You're saying, hey, here's how much power I am taking right now. Here's how much power I could take. Here's how low I can go. And you're telling that to ERCOT real time. They just keep getting this data constantly. And that they use those parameters every 5 minutes when they're about to adjust pricing. They are able to say, hey, based on where you said you could go up to and where you said you could go down to, I need you to go up a megawatt. I need you to go down 2 megawatts. And it all happens in this nice, smooth, straight line transition. So it's really, really precise, really, really surgical. I think it's going to be very, very prominent moving forward.
Okay, so I'm getting told we have 3 more minutes left. So I'll probably skip a couple of questions and want to get y'all's forward look on where things are going. So, in the AI data center space, I think it's been interesting that over the last several months, the notion that these traditional or AI data centers aren't flexible has really been challenged and proven otherwise. And you've even seen companies like Emerald AI, getting millions of dollars from NVIDIA to advance power management in that space. Just wondered if using that as, I guess, a jumping off point, where do you see automation and energy management, going over the next 5 years?
So the first place I go to is AI with trading. We have a lot of conversations with desks that are looking to implement more AI-based logic. I think in theory, every desk is using AI to create the curves and create their position. The further automation of that will be really interesting. We know, like, full desks just set up on AI, convergence bidding, closing that dart spread. I think we will continue to see a growth of that. I don't think we'll see a takeover of that. Maybe for a little bit of time. Some of these old school desks, there's still such a human element in trading and in the power market that it'll be interesting to see where that reaches its brink. What else? So when I think about the next 5 years, I really think about the next 3 years. I think about the interconnection queue. I think about what's actually going to get through, what's going to get built. And I really don't think about the next 5. The next 3 will tell us what happens on that back 2. I think we'll get there. I think there's going to be a lag. I think it's going to take a little bit longer. I question the economics and if the Texas economics can be strong enough before maybe market starts going elsewhere where there's new incentives. But I really think about the next 3 years and from a capacity standpoint, and from the next 5 years from an AI trading.
So we've been aggressively trying to break into that GPU HPC data center space for probably a year and a half, 2 years now. We built a product for it a little over a year ago. The way that we did it's similar to what Emerald AI does. Emerald AI is a little more workload scheduling. So I'm getting a call for a curtailment event. I'm going to suspend certain types of workloads and eventually hit my target. I view it as a little slow moving, but better for a long-term curtailment. Like if I'm going to have a 2 or 3 hour long outage, I need to be able to have some grace to how I get there, but I don't need to get there too quick. I'm going to send some interrupts to my workloads and give them time to save state. And what our capability is we do it more at the GPU level. So we overclock and underclock GPUs very quickly. What does that let us do? It lets us shift the load of an entire data center 80% down, 80% back up within a second. I think that fast forward, what do these data centers look like? I think it's a combination of the two. The ability to participate in a very, very, very fast acting grid presence, load flexibility, and also the ability to eat those long duration curtailments. I don't think ours would work for a long duration curtailment because that basically means everything's working and everybody's just about a less performance, but it's hard to eat that for a long period of time. I think it's a combination of the both. I also really hope that they stop talking about 5 nines because this is not a traditional data center. It's a data center, but it is not a traditional data center type of load. It's stuff that can be responsive, stuff that can dial up and down. It's being built by the big companies that are claiming they want 5 nines on everything, but fast forward a couple of years, 5 nines hopefully becomes a thing of the past, and we're able to stop co-locating stop co-locating batteries, and just make things more grid responsive and flexing the loads up and down. It's like Bitcoin mining back in 2016. You talk to any Bitcoin miner, I can curtail and make what? I have no interest in talking to you. I want 100% uptime. I want to mine Bitcoin 24/7. Now we're in 2025. You find Bitcoin miners that are asking to be turned off just to help make some margin off of energy or energy arbitrage, whatever it is. So that industry will evolve over time too, and it's probably not going to be with just more gens and more batteries.
Thank you both very much.